Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to do a guided art journal page. And what is going to guide me is my art journal prompt and process cards. This is a set of cards that I created that are available as a digital download from Ninny's Napkins. There will be a link in the description box. There are 60 prompts on 15 pages that you can print out and use. Now, these aren't prompts that tell you what you're going to create. They tell you more about the how. They are the steps to an art journal page or the techniques. And you can apply that no matter what your focal image, no matter what your theme. So this helps you pick the steps or do different steps in your art journal process. And today's tutorial, I'm going to use those cards to guide the creation of this art journal page. So I flipped through the cards and I picked use napkins as a background or focal image. And I also picked using magazine pages for the background and focal. And I picked these two and I'm going to work on them somewhat together because I want them to work together. I want my focal image to match my background. And since I'm going to opt to use my napkin as my Insta background, I want it to go with the focal image. Now, this cute girl was from a magazine and it's been floating around on my table for a while. So I really love the expression on her face. So I looked for a napkin that I could use as an Insta background. And this beautiful tropical napkin that I got from NINNYSNAPKINS.com fit the bill. I love how she looks. That's kind of the beautiful tropical thing in the background. So I said I'm going to use this napkin as the Insta background. I'm not going to have to do much of my background aside from this. So to prepare the napkin, you need to take off the two excess plies. Peel one off, peel the other. You can use a little piece of tape, put a little bit of glue on your finger, and just peel them off carefully. All you want to use is the top layer. Now, for my 9 by 12 art journal page, I'm going to use most of this napkin. Now, these excess plies, you can use them in your art for other techniques. And actually, spoiler alert, we're actually going to use it later down the road. So I'm just going to set this on. It fits pretty much. There's a little bit excess, but I want to make sure that I'm getting the focal image where I want it. I like the butterflies around her, floating around her, so I don't want to really cut that off, but there's things that are underneath her, and I want to use them. I want to harvest some of those elements that are there, that are on the excess. So I'm just grabbing a liner brush here, and I'm going to water cut off parts of it that are just going to be under the girl. So you're not going to see them anyways. I'm putting a little bit of water on and then that just breaks down the napkin and I'm going to very carefully, try to save this butterfly, save these flowers that are under there. And I'm going to reuse them on the page to set up my background. So I'm kind of using the napkin in a couple of ways here, but all working to create that background. If I didn't want to harvest these elements, if I didn't want to use them, I could have just glued the girl right on top. No problem. So I just want to save that butterfly. I want to save some of those flowers. And I'm going to change the background somewhat, even though it's pretty much Insta background. So now I'm just lining this up And I'm just going to take my water brush again, my brush with a little bit of water, and make a straight line here to cut it. You can use scissors if you want it. You can just glue this down and then rip that off. But again, I want some of those flowers, some of those butterflies to use. So I don't want them to inadvertently get cut. So I'm being a little bit selective here because I do have a plan. Now, when you use the prompt and process cards, you can pick one and you can pretty much start anywhere. You know, some of these um, steps or techniques are techniques for finishing, and so that's at the end. Some are more for the beginning, but some of them are interchangeable. Now I'm going to glue my napkin down with my fluid matte medium, and I'm just flipping up half the napkin, putting a generous coat of fluid matte medium on. I'm just using a brush to apply it, and then I'm going to lower the napkin and press it into the fluid matte medium. Now there are going to be some wrinkles to some degree. I'm okay with that. It's just added texture. I'm just pushing this down a little bit to make good adhesion here. And then I'm just going to flip it up and put the matte medium on the other side and repeat. So whatever step you choose to do first, that'll kind of dictate what comes next. Now here, this is a little bit of a tip. I grabbed a piece of saran wrap and I'm rubbing this down to make sure I get good adhesion with the fluid matte medium and the napkin. This limits the friction and it's less likely that I'm going to rip my napkin. When the napkin gets wet, it gets very fragile and it's very easy to rip, and I want to avoid that at all costs. So once it's smooth enough, I'm taking a generous portion of fluid matte medium and sealing the napkin. This is really important because anything I put on it, if I didn't seal it, it would kind of wick out on the napkin and give me an effect that I really am not fond of. So this seals it and is going to allow me to do another step down the road. Now, those elements that I wanted to save, the butterfly, the flowers, I start water cutting them out, like you see me doing here, putting a little bit of water on a liner brush, letting it soften the napkin, and then ripping it out. But I very quickly realized that I couldn't get close enough to the edge, and I didn't like having the green from the background on that. And I also realized that when I glued these down onto the background, I don't want to see whatever's underneath peeking through. So I scrapped just water cutting it, and I am going to glue these all down on a piece of scrap copy paper, just with my fluid matte medium. I'm going to put some underneath and some on top to seal it because I want them sealed, just like the napkin that I put on the background. And then once this is dry, I'm going to cut out the floral elements, the butterflies, very easily. Putting it on the copy paper makes it opaque so that when you glue it on to the background, you're not going to see through it. It also stabilizes the paper and makes it easy to cut out. At this point, I don't know if I'm going to use all the elements that I'm putting on here, but if I don't use them on this page, they'll go into my stash and I'll use them on some future page. Nothing ever goes to waste. So once that's completely dry, I am just going to cut out the elements, and it's just fussy cutting 101. Nothing too fancy here. I'm just cutting it out as easily and quickly as I can. And then once all these elements are cut out, I play with them on the page and I position them where I think they look good. So I'm basically changing the composition of the napkin somewhat. So here you see I've placed some of those butterflies, I've placed my girl, and now because it's a thicker paper, I've opted to use my gel medium instead of the fluid medium. And I'm just going to glue down the flowers where I want. And because they have that backing of copy paper, I can put them on top. Now, gluing these on kind of gives a bit of a 3D effect. It changes it from being perfectly flat on the napkin. So it also enhances the look of it. So when people look at it, it's not like they're going to see it and say, oh, she just glued down a napkin. There's a little bit more to that. And some of the next steps are going to show how you can beef that up. And there really is no right or wrong where I'm putting these things. It's just a matter of personal taste. So take some time, play with them, audition them here and there, and then go make your decisions. I play with the idea of putting a flower on her or a butterfly. I end up doing neither. This is when you take time and explore. So I've got some excess hanging over the edges, and it's really important that you take a minute and get rid of them. Cut it off so that you simply have your page. That gives you a better vision of what your page looks like. Having them overlap, it distracts from the eye. It's not giving you the full picture. And you're going to want to make sure that the napkin and everything is completely dry. A cutting tip, turn it upside down. It's just a little easier to see where you or what you'd need to cut off. So the next step, I'm going to paint over and get a painterly effect. Now, I'm not painting over the focal image, the girl, but I am going to get a painterly effect, paint over some of the flowers that are in the background, especially all those flowers that I cut out, I harvested. So here I'm just taking some white gesso on a round brush and I'm just globbing on, technical word, white paint or white gesso. And this is just going to make it brighter. It's giving it more 3D, a little bit of texture. They will stand out off the rest of the background. Now, one other thing that I did here in the background at some point, and I didn't get any footage of it, I used a wash of greens and just enhanced the color of the some of the leaves in that background. Again, I just wanted to make those colors pop just a little bit more. So here I'm just going with the white gesso, globbing it on to the flowers, making them stand out, brightening them, lightening them, adding a little bit of texture because I wanted them to stand out. I wanted the background to be like a magical world behind her head. It just kind of matched her expression. And then I'm just painting the centers a little bit of orange and pink. And the reason I want to enhance that color is because the orange is part of her coat, her dress there. And I wanted to take that and match it to the background. That's one of the reasons I matched this girl with the background because there's that little bit of orange in there. So I just wanted to enhance that. So I'm going back with the gesso, adding the orange, adding a little bit of shading, just here and there, just changing it so slightly to make it more my own and make everything work together. Dropping some yellow in, some orange, and I'm just adding colors. Then I'm also brightening up the butterflies. I'm adding some bright aqua, I'm adding some white, I'm adding the black to the center of the butterfly. Again, it adds texture, it makes it look more painterly, and it stands out from the green leaves. So we have the butterflies and the flowers are all standing out a little bit more than the green leaves, and that's giving you some interest on your page. Adding a little bit of that orange there into the butterflies, enhancing it again because I want it to match the girl. So while my background was pretty much instant, I'm spending my time developing these parts of the background. Now on this one, I'm using the napkin as a background, and I'm actually using some of the visual images that are there, the tropical images. But you can use a napkin that has just a lot of color in it or different colors in it, and then put gesso on it, and basically that's giving you your color story. So you don't necessarily have to go with the focal image. You could just go with the color scheme that is on any kind of napkin. And maybe I'll do a page where I showcase that process because it'd be slightly different use of it as a background. This page from beginning to end with some stops and starts took about 35 to 45 minutes. Just adding a little bit more gesso, going back, do I like it? Now I'm going to edge the page. Now, this step I revisit multiple times, warning, because I take my Inktense blocks and I choose a blue because I'm thinking, in the leaves, there's kind of that teal blue um, color, and I thought that would look really nice. So I'm just scraping my Inktense block along, activating it with some water, and it's kind of wicking out, despite the fact that I use gel medium or gel fluid medium to seal the paper. It's not giving me the effect that I wanted. So I'm edging it, but I'm thinking right now is, oh, this isn't what I want. And when that happens, you have choices, and you're going to see me revisiting this um, and trying to solve a problem. And that's what mixed media art journaling also does. You do one step and it works or it doesn't work, but it guides the next step. And sometimes if it doesn't work out or doesn't give you what you think you want, because it's all about your perception of what's going on, you get to change it. There's always a fix. So for here, the fix, I decide I'm going to edge the page in my usual way. I'm using a black acrylic paint, so I've opted to go black here because I thought, okay, that might work better than the blue. I'm not fond of the blue, and it kind of is giving me a softer shading or edging around the page, and I'm a little bit happier with this. So I'm just going around with my angle brush. This is my floating acrylic technique for shading. So there's many ways that you can shade or edge. And you can see I have my prompt cards. And as I get to one step, I'm flipping through them and saying, okay, what can I do next? What can I do next? So related to edging the page, I'm going to shade or highlight my focal image. And I am going to use the same technique that you saw me edging the page with the black acrylic paint. In fact, I have the same black acrylic paint and I'm just adding some shading on the girl, on her hat, on her coat, on her dress. Again, I'm changing the focal image somewhat, just adding to it. I want this girl to stand out from this very busy, very interesting, but very busy background. I also shade around the outside of the butterflies and some of the flowers, and that footage is gone, but I'm using the angle brush like you see me be doing here with the black acrylic paint, just adding a little bit of that because I want those certain flowers and butterfly elements to stand out from the leafy greens. And when you're doing the finishing, the shading, the edging, it simply takes time. I find doing backgrounds is fairly quick and easy, but the shading part, the finishing part, it's just time consuming. And my prompt and process cards, there are cards that are better suited for the beginning of an art journal page, the middle, or the end of the page. So now I wanted to add a little bit of more interest to the background. There's lots of white spaces, but I didn't want anything too stark. So I decided I'm going to stamp with acrylic paint and I'm choosing gold. There's that little bit of yellow in the page. I thought gold will give a very subtle. So I've got gold paint. I put it on my brayer. I've got a script stamp here, and I'm just going to target some of those open areas on my background. This is giving me a little bit of shimmer and shine, which always makes me happy. A little bit of very subtle patterning. I didn't need anything stark because I got enough going on in that background, but I just wanted to elevate it a little bit more. I've contemplated stamping with black, with not acrylic paint, with ink for because it's a little bit lighter. But again, I thought that would just overtake the tropical background that I had going on. And I didn't want to change it. I'm really happy with it, but I did want to enhance it with a little bit of bling and a little bit of pattern. And hopefully you can see the benefit of adding this step. Now, when you use your acrylic stamps or your stamps with acrylic paint, you want to take time after you're finished stamping to spray it with Murphy's oil soap mixture and wash them. You want to get that paint out of those stamps so you preserve your stamps and can use them again and again and again. Got it where you don't want it, just grab a paper towel, grab a baby wipe and get rid of it. I'm just deciding, do I want to add more? Do I want to add? I'm really liking the subtle addition that this gives. Now I'm going to revisit painting over the focal image. I did that. It's completely dry now. And I'm just taking my stylus with some black paint and just adding some dots to the center of these flowers. Again, enhancing that 3D painterly effect that I was going to. So sometimes with the technique, you do it in stages. Or you don't know that that you need to do it. But I wanted to bring those flower centers, make them a little bit more, add a little more contrast there. and make them stand out a little bit. And the addition of the black there really worked. So for the third time, I'm going to edge the page. So we tried it with the Inktense blocks. We tried it with the shading with the angle brush and acrylic paint. Another way that you can shade is using charcoal pencils. This is a woodless charcoal pencil, Stabilo all pencil, where you put it on and rub it. This gives a softer edge to it. And in this case, I really like it. Then I'm using the woodless charcoal and I am adding some lines, sketchy lines, shading around some of the flowers. Again, I want to bring out those flowers. So I'm going not very perfect around the flowers. I'm rubbing it a bit sometimes to get it kind of a shaded effect. Just adding a little bit here. And I'm good to add this at this stage because I know I'm not putting any liquid on this afterwards. The next thing I'm going to do is add a sentiment, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the excess plies of the napkin. Remember that we took off the 2 plies at the beginning? Well, here's one of them. I'm going to use my wooden stamps, black acrylic paint that I have on a makeup sponge that I'm using as basically a stamp pad, and I'm going to stamp out my chosen sentiment. And in this case, I'm just stamping out the word imagine. It kind of goes with the girl. She's imagining this tropical, magical world behind her. And I thought that was a good word to use. Now, why would I stamp it on the excess ply as opposed to stamping it on white paper? You're going to see the reason for that when we glue it down. So save the excess plies because they are invaluable for a multitude of things on your art journal page. And stamping your sentiment on it is one of those things, especially when it's a short sentiment, like a single word. I wouldn't want to do stamping a whole, phrase. Then after stamping it on the page, I am cleaning the stamps. Again, I have Murphy's oil soap on that cloth and I'm cleaning off the acrylic paint because I want to be able to use these stamps again and again and again. So once the stamps are clean and the acrylic paint is off of them, I just want to make sure before I do anything else that this is completely dry. So I'm using my heat tool. Now this is paper, don't want to get the heat too close. I just want to make sure that it's completely dry. And then I'm going to grab my liner brush and a little bit of water, and I'm going to water cut out the sentiment. I'm just putting a line around it. You don't want to get too close. I want to get off as much of the excess as possible, but you don't have to worry. This napkin is white. I'm just very carefully just getting just that sentiment. Often I stamp it more than once because if if I rip it or something happens, I have another one and I don't have to start from scratch. But today I opted to just do one, wrist it. So now I can audition this on various places on my page. Where do I want it? I don't want it, I want a kind of an open space, nothing that's too dark behind it. Can audition it, move it around the page, and once I decide where it's going, I'm going to glue it down with my fluid matte medium. And what's going to happen here is the napkin behind the stamped letters goes completely translucent. You see the background coming through. The napkin just disappears and you don't see it. Whereas if I had stamped this on copy paper, I would have some white around the black letters. And for this case, I just wanted the sentiment there, but I didn't want it to be front and center. I wanted it a little less pushed back. I'm just giving that a dry. I put a coat of the fluid matte medium on top. And there is our finished page. I absolutely love how this came together using my art journal prompt and process cards. So the first one, I use the napkin as an Insta background. And I actually used the focal images there. I paired it with a magazine cutout, The Girl, and I picked one that the colors kind of coordinated. I used a little bit of paint to tweak the colors and give the painterly effect to certain elements in that background. I edged the page not once, not twice, but 3 times, 3 different ways of doing it. So now you have a choice. I shaded my focal images, the butterflies, and the flowers using my angle brush and the floating acrylic technique. I stamped script with acrylic paint, gold in this case, adding a nice subtle image. And then I stamped the image on the excess plies. And that gives us the completed page. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you give this a try. And if you're looking for some prompt and process cards, check it out at NINNYSNAPKINS.com.